how are you doing?
Hanging in there. Yeah.
You guys had a really wonderfully unique relationship. That is certainly one word to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, you, 42 years, I think it's a mixed bag, and certainly he wore a lot of hats for me. And family for sure. We lost a family member.
So let's start talking about the podcast a little bit. How, the idea for that first season of the podcast, when initially, I thought we were going to bring Peter in and have him talk about all these great directors that he had interviewed, and he had tape of it. And then it would sort of be like, Peter Bogdanovich breaking down Howard Hawks and Louis Milestone and Alfred Hitchcock and John Ford, of course, and Orson Welles. And then our podcast producer, Angela Carone, who I know you're close to too, just became clear that what was really compelling was Peter's story. How was he during that process? How did he, when he left us and went home and talked to you about that, how did you think he was during that? You were there for every single shoot we had.
He loved the process, Ben, and he thought you were amazing with your questions. And he just loves you so much, and he just enjoyed it. And you brought him down memory lane with many personal things that I think were challenging for him and certainly inspiring. Thinking about his heyday, his first 3 huge successes, and he just really loved it. And he couldn't wait to go back like the next time, to finish it. Every time was an exciting next time,
Yeah, well, it was for me too. He so he had these 3 movies. There's again his second. By the way, his first film is is so good. Why can't I remember the name of this movie? Targets, right? From 1968, which he made 3 years before Last Picture Show. It's so wonderful. But these 3 in a row, Picture Show, Doc, and Paper Moon. But then he had this, he fell from the top of the heap, right? Some of it, his own behavior, his own sort of arrogance about how to make movies.
He said he compromised, didn't he?
Yes, he said he definitely compromised. Yeah. And he didn't win a lot of friends. I mean, he was, as Cary Grant said, it's in the podcast, like, stop talking about how happy you are all the time. He was on the cover of People magazine with Sybil Shepherd. They're both so
how
beautiful.
Much you're in love, right?
And stop talking. Nobody likes people who are happy and in love. Shut up about that. And then he came back and he made this wonderful film that we aired, I think, last night, or maybe tonight, on the actual channel, St. Jack with Ben Gazzara, which is such a great, great movie. And then made the movie that he's most proud of, I think, in many ways. What film is that?
They All Laughed?
Yeah, starring, among other people, well, John Ritter, sort of, and Ben Gazzara, Audrey Hepburn, and your sister, Dorothy Stratten,
right,
who Peter was very, very much in love with.
They had a great time making that film, and I think it's his favorite film, but that's what he tells me.
That's what he told us.
Yeah.
I think it is. He's, and then of course the terrible, terrible tragedy and the murder of your sister, which really obviously changed your life, changed your mother's life, Peter's life, changed the life of everybody who loved Dorothy. Who I think I don't have any. I tell everybody that was, there's no way to know exactly what was going to happen to her in this business, but I would say after seeing her, they all laughed at a bare minimum. Bare minimum, your sister was going to be like a huge sitcom star, and that I think is the low end, right? She was just too delightful not to succeed.
She was pretty funny. She had a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was amazing.
So you and Peter, you weren't just a couple while you were married, and after you were divorced, you were collaborators, and. Peter had a movie released. Did it come out on Netflix? Is that right? I think.
Say that again. What?
The 2014 film. The She's Funny That Way.
It was the original title that we wrote, the script, it was Squirrels to the Nuts, and
which is a much better title than She's Funny That Way. But the studio thought, I don't remember who the first studio was, but you'll tell me, but they were worried it would be seen as a children's film.
Oh, cartoon.
Yeah, right. They thought people would think it's a cartoon because every studio executive thinks every audience member is an idiot.
So they tried to figure out what to call it, and Peter was like, I don't know. What about this? And he picked a song title, She's Funny That Way, and that's how that went. But at MoMA, I just came back last night from New York, late last night, and MoMA did a huge retrospective on Peter's films, and they premiered it, Squirrels to the Nuts at MoMA, and it was a gigantic success. And Lionsgate is, they just pre-sold it, so you'll be able to see it on one of the platforms.
Yeah, I'm going to leave some people out. Yeah. I saw it months ago. Peter sent me a copy months before he died, and I mean, I didn't mind the first film. It was fine, right? But this is so much better and so much closer to what the two of you envisioned when you were writing.
Right. I mean, when Peter and I would, see She's Funny That Way at a screening, we'd always lean in together and say, there was a better movie there once.
Right.
Always. And we now finally have the film for people to see, and it's great to see it with an audience, actually.
Yeah.
Comedy. It's always great to laugh with people in a theater, so.
And it has music from Tom Petty.
Tom Petty, yeah.
Yeah, who Peter, of course, did a wonderful documentary on.
Right.
So Owen Wilson, Catherine Hahn, Jennifer Aniston, really strong cast, and I think you guys will definitely enjoy Squirrels to the Nuts, as it was supposed to be seen.
And by the way, Adria Petty, who is Tom Petty's daughter, was so kind to really help with the music and help complete this version for Peter and I. So I can't wait till you guys get to see it.
So my 9-year-old daughter is listening to this conversation. I told her that this film stars a 9-year-old. She may have been 8 when the movie was made. I think she won the Oscar at 9. Maybe it was 9 and 10. I didn't look it up before I got here. Perhaps I should have. But Tatum O'Neal became the youngest Oscar winner ever at the time, and she, she was difficult. And Peter was very honest during the podcast, and has been throughout his life, about how challenging it was, but how much Tatum O'Neal delivered.
She did it.
Yeah.
She did it. He, I think on the podcast, he said that he would go down to her level and speak to her on her level, which was a great director's thing, I think. She did it. I mean, look at that performance. It's amazing.
Yeah, and he thought at the time, he said, like, he thought this, because she could win an Oscar, and he thought she should have been nominated. Well, she is. She's the lead in the movie with Ryan. I mean, she got nominated for Best Supporting Actress, but he always said, no, she should have been nominated for Best Actress. Yeah.
Right.
Which would let Madeline Kahn win for Best Supporting Actress.
That's right. That's the story, yeah.
Yeah. Because her father, who co-stars in the movie, and is, Ryan O'Neal, who's as good as he's a terrific actor, and he's just great here. He was ready to walk out on his daughter, right? He was ready to be like, I can't work with this kid. Yeah.
He was pulling his hair out because he just couldn't. They had these long takes on this dirt road, and it would be like when they'd have to go back to one. Ryan just was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna go crazy.
And she wasn't messing up because she was forgetting her lines. She was like sort of intentionally sabotaging it right at the end because she thought that was hilarious. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Torture.
So Peter was 82 years old when he died, but for all of us, his death was unexpected because he was in the middle of many projects. He was very excited about what 2022 was going to bring, right?
He really was really excited about the new year. He wrote me a text a couple days before he passed, and he said, this is going to be the best year ever. We're going to have everything we want and more, you'll see, with a lot of emojis. And he was not one for texting. He was not one for doing emojis. And boy, were there a lot of emojis. He was so excited, and he was working up into the day in great spirits, and there was no sign of any issue, of any problems at all.
Yeah, and I know you and your mom, I mean, you guys looked after him. You almost both took care of him in a sense. It was this, it was really beautiful to see the three of you together. And but you guys finished a script together, right?
Yeah.
A movie that I know every TCM fan's going to care about, called?
It's Our Love Is Here to Stay. It's about the Gershwin brothers. It's obviously, if you all know about the Gershwin brothers, it's a song called Our Love Is Here to Stay. And it's a beautiful love song, and it's about them, their love story. And we finished the script with Sam Kashner. And it's a beautiful script, and we were actually going into a pitch meeting 4 days after he passed. So we're still going to make it, but we're going to find another director.
Well, you know, Peter was so loved in this town by so many young directors, right? You know, Noah Baumbach and Wes Anderson and Quentin Tarantino, and all these, you know, Greta Gerwig, all these young, talented directors who really valued Peter. And I imagine that it's not going to be Rian Johnson. It wouldn't be hard to find somebody who would love to take over and step in for Peter. I mean, I know this business is complicated and hard, but I would think reason for optimism, I would think.
Right, absolutely. And we also were in the middle of doing a podcast. He got so excited about the podcast with you that we created our own podcast. And it's really cool. It's called One Handshake Away with Peter Bogdanovich. And he had all these old archived, do you know about these? Because you use some of them, right?
Yeah, we use some of them, yeah.
With all these different directors, Hitchcock, Ford, Orson Welles, and so Peter had the idea that we could sit in a room and have a conversation with one of the old directors with one of the recordings, and then bring on a current director. So for example, Quentin Tarantino, he said, Quentin, out of this list of directors we have on tape, which one would you like to discuss? And he wanted to discuss the Dirty Harry director. Please help me, Ben.
Don Siegel?
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's no, Quentin's pick was going to be interesting. There's no question, right?
And so that was really cool, and we did that. We did.
I would pay money to listen to Quentin Tarantino, Peter Bogdanovich talk about Don Siegel. No question.
So we did 4 of them, and we had another 4 to go. So we have another director taking Peter's chair with me to finish them, and I think it's going to be Guillermo del Toro.
Oh, well, that's right. That's another one. Person who loves Peter. Anyway, and last thing, I know we got to go, but you know, Peter was just so prolific, and especially when he was excited and motivated, which he clearly was. So he finished. How many books did he wrap up?
He finished his memoir, and it's called All I Want to Do Is Direct, and another book called 5 American Icons.
All right, so both of those will be headed your way at some point soon. So Paper Moon, Peter was enormously proud of. Orson Welles gave him the title, I believe. I think, is that right?
Yeah.
And told him to stick to his guns and shoot it in black and white. It is a beautiful film, one of the great films from the greatest 10 years in American movie making, 1967 and 1976. Peter's got 3 of those movies in there. So sit back, enjoy. Thank you, Louise. Thanks for coming out to see Paper Moon and enjoy the last day of the festival. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.